My name is Tori Mercer. I'm 41 years old. 14 months ago, my sister changed the locks on our mother's house, took control of Mom's phone, and told every person in our family that Mom didn't want to see me anymore. When I drove over and knocked on the door, my sister called the police on me, standing in my own mother's driveway. For over a year, I wasn't allowed to hear my mother's voice. I didn't know if she was eating well. I didn't know if her arthritis medication was being refilled. I sent letters. My sister returned them unopened. I called. My sister answered Mom's phone every single time and said 3 words: "She doesn't want to talk to you." I hired a private investigator. What he found in my sister's bank account didn't just break my heart. It led to a felony arrest on Christmas Eve. Before I tell you everything, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if this story truly moves you. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. Now, let me take you back to October 2 years ago. The day my mother signed a piece of paper that changed everything. Millbrook, Tennessee. Population just under 4,000. The kind of town where your mail carrier knows your birthday and the pharmacist asks about your knee surgery. I grew up on Ridley Lane, 3 houses down from a Baptist church and 1 street over from the only diner that still serves real biscuits and gravy before 7 a.m. My mother, Ruth Mercer, was 74 that October. She'd lived in the same house for 38 years, a pale yellow ranch style with hydrangeas out front that she watered every morning until her hands couldn't hold the hose straight anymore. Her arthritis had gotten bad over the last few years, and she'd started forgetting small things, leaving the stove on, missing a Wednesday bridge game she'd attended for 2 decades. My father passed 6 years before that, and after he was gone, Mom leaned harder on us, her 2 daughters. My sister Diane is 5 years older than me, 46 at the time. She'd always handled the paperwork side of things: taxes, insurance forms, anything that required a signature and a filing cabinet. I was the one who showed up. 3 or 4 times a week, I'd drive the 25 minutes from my apartment after my shift at Crestwood Memorial, where I work as an ER nurse. I'd cook dinner, sort Mom's pills, help her into the tub if her knees were swollen. So when Mom decided she needed a power of attorney drawn up, she asked Diane. That was 3 years ago. Mom was sharp then. She signed the papers in a lawyer's office downtown with full understanding of what she was granting. I didn't question it. Diane was the organized one. I was the one who showed up with soup and heating pads. Her husband Greg had recently started acting tense around family dinners. Shorter answers, eyes on his phone. I didn't think much of it then. I should have. The changes came slowly. That's the thing about control. It doesn't arrive all at once. It seeps in like water under a door. First, it was the schedule. I'd call Mom on a Tuesday afternoon, and Diane would answer, "She's napping, try tomorrow." I'd try tomorrow. "She's got a doctor's appointment, I'll tell her you called." A week later, I found out Mom's primary care doctor, Dr. Pham, who'd treated her for 11 years, had been replaced. Diane switched her to a new physician across town, someone I'd never heard of. Mom wanted a fresh start, Diane said when I asked. I didn't argue. Maybe Mom did want to change. Maybe I was reading too much into it. But then I noticed the visits shrinking. I used to come by 4 times a week. By December that year, it was down to once a week. Diane always had a reason. Mom's tired. Mom's not feeling social. The house is a mess. Just give me a day to clean up. I kept adjusting, kept accommodating, and it took me longer than I'd like to admit to realize that the fence around my mother was being built one excuse at a time. Then came the evening I drove over without calling first. Just after a 12-hour shift, still in my scrubs. The porch light was off. Inside, the living room was dim, no TV, no radio. Mom was sitting alone in her recliner, staring at the dark window. I knelt beside her. She grabbed my hand with both of hers and held on so tight her knuckles went white. "Don't stop coming," she whispered. Behind me, the kitchen light flicked on. Diane stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "I told you to call first." Her voice wasn't angry. It was flat. Practiced. 2 weeks later, I pulled into Mom's driveway after a night shift. February cold. My breath fogging in front of me as I walked up the porch steps and slid my key into the deadbolt. It didn't turn. I pulled it out, checked it, tried again. Same key I'd used for 15 years. The lock had been replaced. New brass hardware, still shiny under the porch light. I knocked, waited, knocked again. Greg opened the door. He stood in the gap with one hand on the frame, blocking the hallway behind him. Diane says you're not welcome right now. Greg, this is my mother's house. Let me in. I don't make the rules here. Talk to Diane. He closed the door. Not hard, just firmly enough that I heard the new deadbolt slide into place. I stood on that porch for 3 minutes. Then I called Diane. She picked up on the first ring, like she'd been waiting. The locks are for Mom's safety, she said. There have been break-ins in the neighborhood. I drove to the Millbrook police station the next morning and asked about recent break-ins on Ridley Lane. The desk officer checked the log. None. Not in 6 months. That afternoon, I called Mom's phone. Diane answered. She doesn't want to talk to you. Put her on, Diane. I'm telling you what she told me. She doesn't want to talk to you, Tori. Then let me hear her say it. Click. I sat in my car in the hospital parking lot after that call, engine running, heat blasting, staring at the contact photo for Mom's number. A picture of her laughing at Thanksgiving 2 years ago, cranberry sauce on her apron. My sister wasn't protecting Mom. She was hiding her. I sent letters, handwritten, on the lavender stationery Mom always liked. I wrote about my shifts at the hospital, about the weather, about the hummingbird that came back to the feeder on my balcony. Small things, safe things. I signed every one the same way. Love you always, Tori. They came back unopened. Return to sender, written in Diane's handwriting across the front. I sent a birthday gift in April, a cashmere scarf in Mom's favorite shade of dusty rose. No response. I called my Aunt Patty, Mom's younger sister. Can you check on Mom for me? I can't get through. Patty called back the next day. I talked to Diane. She says Ruth is fine. She says you're being dramatic, honey. I called Mom's church, Grace Baptist, where she'd been a member for 40 years. The secretary told me Ruth hadn't attended in 3 months. Diane mentioned she wasn't feeling up to it. 3 months without church. Mom never missed church. Not when Dad was sick. Not when she broke her wrist. Not once. Then I saw the Facebook post. Diane had uploaded a photo of Mom at a table. Sunday brunch, apparently. Eggs, orange juice, a small vase of flowers. Mom was smiling, but her cheeks were hollow. Her collarbone was sharper than I remembered. The caption read, Sunday brunch with Mom. #blessed. I zoomed in on my mother's face and felt something cold settle behind my ribs. A week later, my coworker Sarah pulled me aside in the break room at Crestwood. I saw your mom at Walmart on Saturday. She was alone in the cereal aisle. She asked me if you'd moved away. Moved away. I lived 25 minutes from her front door. Someone had told my mother I was gone. I called Adult Protective Services on a Monday morning, sitting in my car in the hospital parking garage. I gave them everything. The changed locks, the blocked calls, the returned letters, the 3 months of missed church, the weight loss I could see in a single photograph. The caseworker was polite, professional. She said they'd send someone out for a welfare check. They went on a Thursday. Diane was home. I found out later what the investigator saw when she walked in. A spotless living room. Fresh vacuum lines on the carpet. A vase of grocery store carnations on the side table. Mom dressed in clean clothes, hair brushed, sitting upright on the couch. The refrigerator was stocked. Milk, eggs, fruit, containers of soup labeled with dates. Diane met the investigator at the door with red-rimmed eyes. She dabbed at them with a tissue while she talked. My sister hasn't visited in months. I'm doing everything alone, bathing her, cooking, managing her medications. It's exhausting, but I love my mother. This is what family does. The investigator spent 45 minutes. She wrote her report. No evidence of abuse or neglect at this time. Diane called Aunt Patty that same evening. A PS just came to my house because of Tori. They found nothing. Do you see what she's putting me through? By the weekend, half my family had heard the story. Tori called the government on her own sister. Tori is making up lies. Tori is the problem. But 3 days after that visit, my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. Tori, this is Betty Dawson. I live next door to your mama. Betty was 72. She'd lived on Ridley Lane for 30 years. Honey, your sister cleaned that house top to bottom the morning before they came. The night before, that refrigerator was nearly empty. I went back. I know how that sounds. The caseworker had closed the file. Diane had the legal paperwork. Half my family thought I was the villain. But my mother had asked a stranger at Walmart if I'd moved away, and Betty Dawson had just told me the refrigerator was staged. So on a Saturday morning in early spring, I drove to Ridley Lane. I didn't park in the driveway this time. I walked across the lawn to the side yard, close enough to see the kitchen window, and I called out, "Mom, it's Tori! I'm right here!" For a moment, nothing. Then the curtain in the living room shifted. Mom's face appeared behind the glass, pale, thinner than the last time I'd seen her in person. She pressed her hand flat against the window, 5 fingers on the glass. And then the front door opened. Diane, phone already to her ear. "Yes, she's here again. She's on the property." The patrol car arrived in 8 minutes. 2 officers. One of them recognized me from the ER. I'd treated his partner for a dislocated shoulder last year. He looked uncomfortable. Diane stood on the porch, one hand on her hip, the other holding the POA paperwork she'd clearly kept by the door. "She's been harassing us. My mother is scared of her." The officer turned to me. "Ma'am, she has legal authority. We've been out here before. If you come back without an invitation, we'll have to file a report." I looked past him, at the window. Mom's hand was gone. The curtain had fallen back. I walked to my car. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. Not there. Not in front of Diane. I saw my mother's hand on that glass, 5 fingers, and I couldn't hold them. That night, I sat in the parking lot of the Mapco gas station on Route 9, engine off, windows up, still in my scrubs from a 10-hour shift. I hadn't eaten since noon. I opened the Notes app on my phone and started a list. Things I'm losing. 1. Mom's health is declining and I have no way to verify she's getting proper medical care. I'm a registered nurse and I can't even check her blood pressure. 2. Diane controls Mom's finances. Every bank account, every bill, every dollar of Dad's pension. No one is auditing any of it. 3. The story in Millbrook is that I abandoned my mother. My coworkers heard it. My aunt believes it. My Uncle Steve called me last week and said, "Maybe give Diane some space." 4. Time. Mom is 74 with worsening arthritis and mild memory issues. Every day I can't see her is a day I don't get back. I closed the app and stared at the gas station sign flickering orange against the dark sky. Then I thought about Dad. About the last thing he said to me before the stroke took his speech, sitting in the backyard in his lawn chair, watching the sun go down over Ridley Lane. "Look after each other, but especially look after your mother." I'd done everything the gentle way. I'd called, I'd written letters, I'd asked relatives for help, I'd contacted the church, I'd filed with APS, I'd stood in the yard and shouted my mother's name, and every single time, Diane had a script ready. I wasn't going to out-talk her. I needed someone who dealt in facts, not family politics. That night, at 11:30 p.m., I searched Elder Law Attorney, Millbrook, Tennessee. The third result was a woman named Margaret Haynes. Her reviews said one thing over and over. She believed me when no one else did. I called her office at 8 the next morning. "If you're still here, I need to tell you something. When I was sitting in that parking lot, I felt like the most alone person in the world. My own sister turned my family against me. The police told me to leave my mother's property. A PS said there was no abuse. Everyone believed Diane. If you've ever been the one person in your family who sees the truth, but no one believes you, drop a fire emoji in the comments. And if this story is hitting close to home, hit that subscribe button. Because what I did next changed everything. Now, back to where I was. Margaret Haynes's office was on the second floor of a brick building above a hardware store on Main Street. Small waiting room, one receptionist, shelves crammed with legal volumes so thick they bent the wood. She was 58, silver-streaked hair pulled back tight, reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She shook my hand once, firm, and sat down behind a desk covered in manila folders. "Tell me everything," she said. "Start at the beginning. Don't leave anything out." I talked for 40 minutes. She didn't interrupt once. She took notes on a yellow legal pad in handwriting so small I couldn't read it from across the desk. When I finished, she set down her pen and asked 3 questions. "Does your mother have a diagnosed cognitive impairment?" Her old doctor, noted mild memory decline, nothing formal. "Has your sister provided any financial accounting since receiving the POA?" "No, not once. Not to me, not to anyone." "Has anyone other than you expressed concern about your mother's situation?" "Her neighbor, Betty Dawson, and my coworker, who saw Mom alone at a store." Margaret leaned back. She took off her reading glasses and let them hang. "A power of attorney does not grant your sister the right to isolate your mother from her family. And as agent, your sister has a fiduciary duty, a legal obligation, to act solely in your mother's interest. If she can't account for how she's handled your mother's money, that's not just suspicious, that's actionable." She laid out a plan. Step 1. Send a formal demand for accounting, a certified letter requiring Diane to produce complete financial records within 30 days. Step 2. Hire a private investigator to run a parallel financial trace. Step 3. Prepare a petition to revoke the POA if Diane refused to comply. "In my experience," Margaret said, folding her hands, "when someone fights this hard to keep family away, it's not about care, it's about money." The demand for accounting went out on a Tuesday via certified mail. Margaret drafted it. 3 pages, precise language, legal citations. It required Diane to produce a full financial report of every transaction made on Ruth Mercer's accounts from the date the POA took effect. She had 30 days to respond. Diane signed for the letter on Thursday. She called me Friday evening. First time she'd dialed my number in 5 months. "A lawyer? Really, Tori? You're suing your own family?" "I'm asking for an accounting. That's your legal obligation." "Mom is fine. I handle everything." "Then prove it. Show the records." "You have no idea what I do for her every day." "I'd love to find out. That's exactly what the letter asks." Her breathing changed. Faster, sharper. "This is going to kill Mom. You know that, right?" "What's killing Mom is not seeing her daughter for 5 months." The line went dead. Within 48 hours, I started getting calls. Uncle Steve phoned first. "Diane told me you're taking your mother to court. Is that true?" "I'm requesting financial records from Diane. That's it." "It sounds like you're trying to start a war." "I'm trying to see my mother, Steve." He didn't call back. Then Aunt Patty. Then my cousin Mark's wife. Diane had reached every branch of the family tree with the same twisted version of the truth. Tori hired a lawyer to go after Mom's money. Tori's suing Mom. Tori is trying to have Diane removed so she can take over. The real story, that I simply asked for a financial accounting, something Diane was legally required to provide, didn't make the rounds. It wasn't dramatic enough. Diane's version was better theater. But 30 days was 30 days. The clock was ticking. 30 days passed. No envelope, no email, no phone call from Diane's attorney, assuming she even had one. Margaret checked the certified mail receipt, confirmed delivery, and opened a new folder on her desk. "In 22 years of practicing elder law," she said, "I have never seen an innocent agent refuse to provide an accounting. Not once." She let that sit for a moment. Then she pulled a business card from her drawer, and slid it across the desk. Frank Russo, licensed private investigator, financial forensics and elder abuse cases. Frank is former law enforcement, 12 years with the Nashville PD, 6 of those in their financial crimes unit. He's thorough, he's discreet, and he doesn't guess. I called Frank that afternoon. We met at a diner off I-40, halfway between Millbrook and Nashville. He was 55, stocky, gray buzz cut, the kind of man who ordered black coffee without looking at the menu. He listened the way Margaret had, quietly, completely. And when I finished, he pulled a small notebook from his jacket pocket. I need your mother's full legal name, date of birth, social security number if you have it, bank names, checking, savings, any investment accounts you know about, your sister's full married name, her husband's name, their home address. I gave him everything I had. Then he asked one more question. Does your sister drive a new car? I blinked. She got a Chevy Tahoe about a year ago, white. I assumed Greg bought it. Frank wrote something in his notebook and closed it. People who steal from family always leave a trail, he said. They just assume no one's looking. He told me he'd need 4 to 6 weeks. I told him to take whatever time he needed. But I also told him to hurry. Frank started with surveillance. 3 days a week, he parked a rental sedan on the cross street behind Ridley Lane and watched my mother's house through a telephoto lens. His notes were clinical. Diane arrived most days between 10 and 11 a.m. She stayed 30 to 45 minutes. She collected the mail, sat at the kitchen table with her laptop open, and left. No home health aides visited, no physical therapists, no meal deliveries, no pharmacy couriers. Mom was alone for roughly 23 hours a day. Meanwhile, I met Betty Dawson again. This time at a coffee shop 2 towns over, because Betty was afraid Diane would see us talking. Betty stirred her tea and talked with the steady voice of a woman who'd been watching from her window for months. Your mama sits in that front room all day. Diane comes, checks the mail, types on her computer at the kitchen table, and leaves. That's it. Does Mom go outside? Hardly ever. Last week Diane drove her somewhere. Your mama came back crying. Red eyes shaking. I don't know where they went. Betty paused, set down her spoon. 2 months ago, your mama knocked on my door. She asked me to call you. I tried, Tori. I called your cell 3 times. It went straight to voicemail every time. I pulled up my phone log right there at the table. No missed calls from Betty's number. Nothing. Then I checked my blocked numbers list. And there it was. Betty Dawson's number. Blocked. I hadn't blocked it. I'd never had a reason to. But 6 months earlier, at a family cookout, Diane had asked to borrow my phone to look up a recipe. She'd had it for less than 2 minutes. That was long enough. Your mama asked me to tell you she loves you, Betty said. I've been trying for months. 6 weeks after I hired him, Frank called and asked me to come to his office. He didn't say what he'd found. He just said, "Bring someone with you if you need to." I went alone. His office was a converted garage behind his house in East Nashville. Metal desk, 2 filing cabinets, a whiteboard on the wall covered in dates and arrows. He had a manila folder on the desk, thick as a paperback novel. He opened it and turned it toward me. Over the past 14 months, I've identified 43 separate transfers from your mother's accounts, checking, savings, and a small brokerage, into an account held jointly by Diane Mercer Holt and Gregory Holt. He flipped to a summary page. The number at the bottom was circled in red, $203,412. I stared at it. He kept talking. $47,000 went to their mortgage company, $38,000 to a Chevrolet dealership, that's the Tahoe, $28,000 to a roofing contractor, a kitchen remodeler, and a landscaping company, all for work done at your sister's home address. $22,000 to Middle Tennessee State University, tuition payments for Kaylee Holt. The remaining $68,000 is spread across credit card payments, retail, dining, a spa in Franklin, and miscellaneous cash withdrawals. He let me absorb that. Then he flipped to another page. Your mother's combined balance 14 months ago was $287,000. As of last week, it's 34,000 and change. I put the paper down. My hands were shaking. There's one more thing. Frank pulled out a single sheet, a phone record summary. Your mother made 23 calls to your cell number in the last 6 months. Every single call lasted under 5 seconds. Someone was ending those calls before they connected. 23 times. She tried 23 times. Margaret spread Frank's documents across her conference table like a surgeon laying out instruments. She read each page in silence, made 2 marks in the margins, and then sat back. This isn't just a breach of fiduciary duty, she said. This is criminal. She outlined 3 steps, and she spoke like someone who had done this before, because she had. First, we file a petition to revoke the power of attorney in probate court. I can have it drafted by Friday and filed Monday morning. Second, I'm sending this entire file to the district attorney's office. $200,000 taken from a 74-year-old woman with documented cognitive decline. That's felony elder financial abuse in Tennessee. Third, I'm contacting Adult Protective Services again, this time with Frank's surveillance notes and the financial evidence. They'll have to reopen the case. How long for the criminal side? The DA's investigation could take weeks, maybe a couple of months. They'll subpoena bank records independently, verify everything Frank found. But the petition to revoke, that's faster. We file Monday. Hearing could be set within 30 days. I nodded. Tori. Margaret looked at me over her reading glasses. I want to make sure you understand. If the DA moves forward, your sister could face prison time. This isn't a civil penalty. This is a felony. I understand. Are you prepared for what that means for your family? I'm prepared for my mother to be safe. Margaret closed the folder. She thought no one was watching. That was her first mistake. I drove home that evening on the back roads, windows down, October air sharp against my face. On Diane's Facebook page, posted 2 hours earlier, a photo of a Christmas wreath on a front door. Caption, getting the house ready for the holidays. She had no idea what was coming. Diane hosted Thanksgiving at Mom's house. She used Mom's kitchen, Mom's dining table, Mom's china, and, as I'd learn later, Mom's money to buy the turkey, the wine, and the centerpiece. I wasn't invited. The guest list included Aunt Patty, Uncle Steve, Cousin Mark and his wife Julie, and Grandma Evelyn, who was 87 and had driven 40 minutes from Cookville with a sweet potato casserole on her lap. 15 people total, counting neighbors. A full house. Aunt Patty called me that evening. She'd had 2 glasses of wine and her voice was tight the way it gets when she's holding back. Diane gave a little speech before dinner. She stood at the head of the table holding your mother's hand. What did she say? She said, Patty paused. She said it's been so hard doing this alone, that you haven't called Mom in over a year, that you don't care. I closed my eyes. Then she said you hired a lawyer to try to take Mom's money. Uncle Steve shook his head and said, That's terrible. Ruth deserves better. Everyone was nodding. What did Mom do? She just sat there, Tori, eyes down. She didn't eat much. Diane kept putting food on her plate and Mom just pushed it around. Patty's voice dropped. But here's the thing. When Diane went to the kitchen to get dessert, your mother looked up. She looked around the table like she was checking if anyone was watching. I think she wanted to say something. But then Diane came back with the pie, and your mother just folded. She looked down at her hands and didn't speak for the rest of the meal. My mother had been in a room full of family, and she was still alone. Margaret sent the financial evidence packet to Adult Protective Services the Monday after Thanksgiving. 15 pages of bank transfers, Frank's surveillance log, and a formal request for an independent welfare check, unannounced this time. A PS assigned a different investigator. The visit happened on a Wednesday afternoon. Diane was not home. Greg answered the door. He looked confused, shifted his weight, let the investigator in without argument. Mom was sitting in the living room in her bathrobe at 2 in the afternoon. The TV was off. There was a glass of water on the side table and nothing else. The investigator, a woman named Clara, sat down across from Mom and introduced herself. Mom's first question was immediate. "Where's Tori? Is Tori okay?" Clara noted it. "Can you tell me about your daughter, Tori?" "Diane says she moved away, but I don't believe that anymore. I tried to call her so many times. The phone never rings." "When was the last time you spoke with Tori?" Mom's hands twisted in her lap. "I don't remember exactly. Months. A long time." Clara asked about finances. Did Ruth know her bank balance? Did she review her statements? Did she authorize any large transfers? "Diane handles all that. I sign what she tells me to sign. She said it was for insurance." "Do you know how much money is in your accounts?" "I don't know. I used to get the mail, but Diane picks it up now. She said it was easier." Greg stood in the kitchen doorway during the entire interview, arms folded, saying nothing. Clara filed her report that evening. Concerns about financial exploitation and possible isolation. Recommended further investigation. She called me the next day and said one sentence I'll never forget. "Your mother asked about you 17 times in 40 minutes. The district attorney's office in Millbrook County operates out of a limestone building on Court Street, 3 blocks from the Baptist church where Mom used to sing in the choir. I'd driven past it 1,000 times without ever thinking I'd walk inside." The assistant DA assigned to the case was Julia Porter. Mid-40s, dark blazer, no jewelry except a plain wedding band. She had Frank's financial report open on her desk and a legal pad full of notes. $203,000, she said, transferred from the accounts of an elderly woman with documented cognitive decline by the agent entrusted with her care. That's well above the threshold for felony financial exploitation of an elderly adult under Tennessee law. She looked up. "Ms. Mercer, I have to ask you directly. Are you prepared for what this means? If we move forward, your sister could face significant prison time." "I'm prepared for my mother to be safe," Julia nodded. "We'll subpoena the bank records independently. That takes time, but Frank's work gives us a strong foundation. We'll coordinate with APS and likely seek an arrest warrant once we've verified the transfers." "How long?" "Weeks. Maybe less, depending on the banks." She stood, shook my hand. "You did the right thing bringing this forward. A lot of families don't. The silence is what lets it continue." I drove home and opened Facebook for the first time in days. Diane had posted 3 hours earlier. A photo of a Christmas tree. Tall, full, lit with white lights, in what I recognized as her living room. The room with the new kitchen behind it. The kitchen that was remodeled with my mother's money. Caption, "Christmas is coming. So grateful for family." I closed the app and set my phone face down on the counter. Christmas was coming. She was right about that much. The petition to revoke Diane's power of attorney was filed on a Monday. The court set a hearing date for mid-January. Diane was served on a Wednesday. She called me within the hour. Her voice was different from any version I'd heard before. Not the controlled manager, not the tearful martyr. This time she sounded cornered. "You will regret this. I'm protecting our mother, Diane. You're destroying this family. The family was fine until you changed the locks." She hung up. Over the next 72 hours, Diane escalated. She disconnected the Wi-Fi at Mom's house, the only way Mom could have used her iPad to reach anyone. She gave Greg strict orders: no one enters, no one leaves without her permission. She changed Mom's phone number entirely. Then she went on offense. She called every relative: Aunt Patty, Uncle Steve, Cousin Mark, Grandma Evelyn. Each call followed the same script, delivered through sobs. "Tori is trying to take guardianship so she can control Mom's money. Tori is the one exploiting her. I've been protecting Mom from Tori this whole time. Uncle Steve called me that Sunday. He didn't ask questions. He made a statement. 'Leave your mother alone, Tori. Haven't you done enough?' I stood at my kitchen counter, phone pressed to my ear, and said nothing for a long moment. 'Steve, when this is over, I hope you remember that you said that.' He didn't respond. What Diane didn't know, what none of them knew, was that the DA's office had already completed their verification. The bank records matched Frank's findings down to the cent. Julia Porter had submitted the arrest warrant application to a judge 3 days earlier. It was approved on December 22nd. And Diane's Christmas Eve party, the one she was organizing with my mother's money, was 2 days away. I know some of you right now are yelling at the screen. Believe me, I was living it, and I wanted to scream too. My own uncle told me to leave my mother alone. My sister was spending Mom's money on Christmas decorations for a party I wasn't invited to. But here's what I learned. When the people you love believe the wrong person, the only thing you can do is trust the evidence. If you've ever had to fight your own family to protect someone you love, type "I understand" in the comments. And stay with me, because Christmas Eve is coming. Now let me tell you what happened that night. December 24th, 6:30 p.m., temperature in the low 30s with a light wind coming off the hills east of town. The kind of Tennessee winter evening where the cold settles into your coat collar and stays. Diane's house, the one with the new roof, the remodeled kitchen, and the white Chevy Tahoe parked in the freshly paved driveway, was lit up like a department store. Strings of white lights along the gutters, a wreath on the front door. Through the bay window, I could see the Christmas tree she'd posted about, tall, full, glowing. Inside, 15 people. Aunt Patty and her husband, Uncle Steve, Cousin Mark and Julie, Grandma Evelyn, seated near the fireplace with a blanket over her knees. A few neighbors from Diane's street. Greg, standing by the kitchen island, pouring wine, checking his phone every few minutes with the restless attention of a man who couldn't quite settle. And Mom, sitting on the living room couch in a new cream-colored sweater, hands folded in her lap. She looked small. The sweater seemed too large. Someone had styled her hair, and she was wearing lipstick. The kind of careful presentation that's done for an audience, not for comfort. Diane moved through the room like a hostess at a charity gala, refilling glasses, adjusting the music, soft instrumental Christmas standards, carrying a tray of something from the oven with a dish towel draped over her shoulder. "I just want Mom to have a perfect Christmas," she told Aunt Patty. "She deserves that, after everything." Patty nodded. Uncle Steve raised his glass. "I wasn't there for any of this. I was sitting in my car, parked on a side street 2 blocks away, engine running, heater on, phone face up on the passenger seat. Waiting." At 7:41 p.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Julia Porter. "Warrant is being served now." At 7:47 p.m., the doorbell rang at Diane's house. She opened it with a wine glass in her right hand and a smile still fading from whatever she'd been saying to the room behind her. 2 Millbrook County Sheriff's deputies stood on the porch, shoulders squared, breath visible in the cold air. "Diane Mercer Holt?" "Yes?" "Ma'am, we have a warrant for your arrest. You're being charged with felony financial exploitation of an elderly adult." The wine glass stayed in her hand. Her smile didn't fall. It froze, like her face couldn't decide what expression to make next. "Excuse me?" "Ma'am, we need you to step outside." Behind her, the living room went silent. The instrumental Christmas music was still playing, "O Holy Night," and for a few seconds it was the only sound. 15 people stood or sat in various positions of mid-holiday ease, glasses in hand, plates balanced on knees, all of them now staring at the front door. Grandma Evelyn set her glass down on the end table, slowly, deliberately. Uncle Steve's mouth opened, then closed. Aunt Patty pressed her hand over her own lips. Cousin Mark's wife Julie took a half-step backward into the hallway. Diane turned to face the room. Her eyes were wild, scanning from face to face. "This is Tori's doing. She's lying. She's been lying about me for months." The deputy spoke again. "Ma'am, please step outside. We can do this calmly." "It's Christmas Eve," Diane said. Her voice cracked for the first time. "You can't do this on Christmas Eve." "The warrant is valid, ma'am. Please set down the glass." She put the wine on the windowsill. Her hands were shaking. The deputy guided her arms behind her back. The handcuffs clicked. 2 small, precise sounds that cut through "O Holy Night" like a crack in glass. Diane walked out the front door, between the white Christmas lights, into the dark. Someone turned off the music. I don't know who. By the time I heard about what happened inside, Aunt Patty told me later, every detail word for word. The room had the airless quality of a place where something had just detonated. Greg sank into a chair by the kitchen island and put his face in his hands. Nobody went to him. It was Aunt Patty who moved first. She crossed the living room and sat down next to Mom on the couch. She took Mom's hand. "Ruth, what's going on?" Mom didn't answer right away. Her lips moved once, twice, like she was testing whether the words would come. Then they did. "I've been trying to call Tori." Her voice was thin but steady. "Diane told me Tori moved away. She told me Tori didn't love me anymore. She told me Tori changed her number." Patty shook her head. "Ruth, that's not—" "I know." Mom's chin lifted. "I know now. Diane took my phone. She took the mail. She took everything. I asked Betty next door to call Tori for me, and it didn't go through. I didn't understand why." Uncle Steve stood by the fireplace, absolutely still. His face had gone the color of old paper. Mom's eyes filled. She gripped Patty's hand tighter. "Diane made me sign papers. I didn't understand what they were. She said it was for insurance. She told me not to worry about money, that she was handling it all. I trusted her." A tear ran down the crease beside her nose. "I want Tori. Please call Tori." Patty already had her phone out. My number. 2 rings. I answered in my car, 2 blocks away, engine still running. "Tori?" Patty's voice was uneven. "Come get your mother." I drove the 2 blocks in under a minute, parked crooked against the curb, left the engine running. The front door was still open. The Christmas lights along the gutter blinked in slow, even pulses, red, white, illuminating the empty porch where, 5 minutes earlier, my sister had been led away in handcuffs. I stepped inside. The living room smelled like pine needles and roasted something, wine glasses on every surface, a half-carved ham on the dining table, the Christmas tree still glowing in the corner. 15 faces turned toward me. I didn't look at any of them. Mom was on the couch. She was already trying to stand. Patty had a hand on her arm, steadying her, but Mom pushed up with both hands on the cushion and rose to her feet. She was thinner than the last time I'd held her. The cream sweater hung off her shoulders. Her wrists looked like they could snap. 14 months. "You came," she said. "I never stopped trying, Mom." She reached for me. I closed the distance in 2 steps. When I put my arms around her, I could feel her ribs through the sweater. She held on with a strength I wasn't expecting, both hands fisted in the back of my jacket, her face pressed into my shoulder. We stood like that. I don't know how long. The room was silent except for Mom's breathing, which came in short, stuttered gasps that weren't quite sobs. Uncle Steve was somewhere behind me. After a while, I heard his voice, quiet, stripped of everything I'd heard in it before. "Tori, I'm sorry. I didn't know." I looked at him over Mom's shoulder. None of us knew. That was the point. I wrapped my coat around Mom's shoulders, walked her out the front door, past the Christmas lights in the Chevy Tahoe, and drove her home. I didn't say Merry Christmas. I just held her hand and drove. Diane spent Christmas night in the Millbrook County Detention Center. Greg posted bail the next morning. $20,000, borrowed against a credit card that was already near its limit. The charges were formal and specific. Felony financial exploitation of an elderly adult, a Class B felony under Tennessee law, carrying a potential sentence of 8 to 30 years. A separate count of theft over $60,000. The DA's office had verified every transfer Frank identified, down to the last deposit at the Chevrolet dealership. Margaret filed the emergency petition to revoke Diane's power of attorney the same week. The probate judge reviewed the financial evidence, the APS investigator's second report, and Frank's surveillance documentation. He revoked the POA in a 10-minute hearing. Diane wasn't even present. Her criminal attorney advised her not to attend. I was appointed temporary guardian. The court issued a protective order. Diane was prohibited from accessing any of Ruth's financial accounts, from making medical decisions on her behalf, and from contacting her without supervised approval. If she wanted to visit Mom, it had to be arranged through a court-appointed supervisor, and only if Mom agreed. Mom didn't agree. Not that week. Not the week after. Diane's bank accounts were frozen pending restitution proceedings. The court ordered her to repay the full $203,412. Her attorney argued hardship. The judge noted that the hardship was of her own making. During the financial review, the DA's office found one more thing. 8 months before the arrest, Diane had contacted Mom's life insurance provider and changed the sole beneficiary, from me to herself. Mom's signature was on the form. Shaky. Barely legible. Dated the same day Betty Dawson saw Diane drive Mom somewhere and bring her back crying. Margaret called me when that detail surfaced. She said only one thing. It's worse than we thought. Greg called me in January. A Tuesday evening, just after 7. I was drying dishes in the kitchen while Mom watched a rerun of Wheel of Fortune in the next room. His voice sounded like it had been rubbed down with sandpaper. I know you hate us, but I want you to know something. I told Diane to stop. After the first 50,000, I told her this was wrong. I set the dish towel on the counter. But you didn't stop it. No, I didn't. Why? He exhaled, long and heavy. We were 3 months behind on the mortgage. The bank was sending letters. Kaylee got into MTSU and we didn't have tuition. I kept telling myself Diane would pay it back, that Ruth would have wanted to help us if she knew. I'm not making excuses. I'm just telling you what I told myself. You watched my mother sit in that house alone, Greg. You opened the door and told me I wasn't welcome. Silence. You stood in the hallway while my sister intercepted Mom's phone calls, while she returned my letters, while she told our entire family I was the one who abandoned her. More silence. I don't need your confession. I need you to understand what you helped do. My mother thought I left her. For 14 months, she believed her own daughter didn't love her anymore. That's what you protected. I could hear him breathing on the other end, ragged, wet. I hope you figure out how to live with that, Greg. I hung up. Greg was charged separately. Accessory to financial exploitation, a misdemeanor. He pleaded no contest and received 2 years of probation and a fine. He never called me again. I didn't want his apology. I wanted the 14 months back, and nobody could give me that. I turned the front room of my apartment into a bedroom for Mom. It wasn't much. A full-size bed from the furniture outlet on Highway 70, a nightstand, a reading lamp, and the quilt from her old house that still smelled faintly like her lavender drawer sachets. The apartment was small and single-story, which was the only thing that mattered. No stairs, wide doorways, a bathroom she could reach without crossing the whole house. The first doctor's visit was hard to hear. Dr. Nguyen, Mom's new physician, one I chose, ran a full workup. Mild malnutrition, 8 pounds underweight. Arthritis worsened by months of inactivity. Cognitive assessment confirmed what we'd suspected. Mild cognitive impairment, early stage. Treatable with routine, proper nutrition, and stimulation. Not dementia. Not yet. She needs structure, Dr. Nguyen said. Regular meals, physical therapy, and most of all, she needs to feel safe. We started slow. Breakfast together every morning before my shift. A home health aide named Karen who came 3 days a week to help with PT exercises and keep Mom company. We got her back on her arthritis medication, the right dosage, at the right time, every day. Within a month, she was sleeping through the night for the first time in over a year. One morning in late February, Mom was sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of tea between her hands. The light was coming through the window, catching the steam. She looked up and asked me a question so quiet I almost missed it. Why didn't Diane just ask me for help? I would have given her the money. I sat down across from her. I don't know, Mom. I would have helped her. She didn't have to lie. She looked down at her tea. She was always so worried about money, even when she was little. I just didn't think she'd take mine. In a town of 4,000 people, a Christmas Eve arrest doesn't stay quiet. By New Year's Day, the story had passed through every pew at Grace Baptist, every booth at the Route 9 diner, and every checkout line at the Millbrook Piggly Wiggly. The details shifted depending on who was telling it. Some versions had Diane dragged out screaming, others had her fainting on the porch. But the core fact was the same. Diane Mercer Holt had been arrested for stealing from her own mother. The people who had believed Diane's version of things, that I was the absent daughter, the troublemaker, the one who abandoned Mom, went quiet. Not all at once, in stages. Like a room full of people slowly realizing they'd been applauding the wrong person. Pastor Williams from Grace Baptist called me in early January. "Tori, I owe you an apology. Diane told me your mother didn't want visitors. I should have gone to see Ruth myself. I failed her." "You weren't the only one, Pastor." A nurse at Crestwood stopped me in the hallway. "I heard what happened. I'm sorry I believed what was going around." I thanked her and kept walking. I didn't correct anyone. I didn't post on Facebook. I didn't write a letter to the editor of the Millbrook Gazette. The truth did its own work. It always does, eventually. The problem is what happens in the gap between the lie and the truth catching up. Diane deleted her Facebook account in the second week of January. The hashtag, blessed posts, the Sunday brunch photos, the Christmas tree, all of it, gone. Like she could erase the performance by removing the stage. I didn't need anyone to be sorry. I needed them to remember that believing one side of a story is a choice, and choices have weight. The plea deal came through in March. Julia Porter from the DA's office laid it out in a conference room at the county courthouse. Diane's criminal defense attorney, a Nashville lawyer Greg had found through a legal referral service, sat across the table with a folder full of arguments that didn't hold up. The offer? Diane pleads guilty to 1 count of felony financial exploitation of an elderly adult. In exchange, the theft charge is dropped. Sentencing: 5 years supervised probation, 200 hours of community service, full restitution of $203,412, and a permanent restraining order barring her from any involvement in Ruth Mercer's financial or medical affairs. Violation of any term would result in immediate incarceration. If she rejected the deal and went to trial, Julia made it clear the evidence was comprehensive, the bank records were verified, and a jury in Millbrook County, a town that already knew the story, would not be sympathetic. Diane took the deal. At the plea hearing, she stood before the judge in a gray blazer that didn't quite fit anymore. She'd lost weight. Her attorney entered the guilty plea on her behalf. Diane confirmed it when the judge asked directly. "I never meant to hurt her," Diane said. Her voice broke on the last word. The judge paused, looked at her over his glasses. "The evidence presented to this court suggests otherwise, Ms. Holt." I sat in the third row. I didn't look at Diane. I kept my eyes forward, my hands flat on my knees. After the hearing, in the hallway outside the courtroom, a voice stopped me. "Aunt Tori?" Kaylee, 18 years old, standing by the water fountain with red eyes and her backpack over one shoulder. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." I pulled my niece into a hug and held her there. She was shaking. Families don't shatter clean. They fracture along lines you didn't know were there, and the pieces don't fit back the way they were. Aunt Patty started coming by my apartment every Saturday. She'd bring pecan pie or a casserole or sometimes just herself, and she'd sit with Mom for an hour while I ran errands or just stood in the shower with the water too hot, letting the week rinse off. She never said, "I should have known." She just showed up. That was enough. Uncle Steve was harder. He called in February, 3 weeks after the plea hearing. His voice had the stiff, careful tone of a man reading from a script he'd rehearsed in the car. "Tori, I owe you an apology. I should have listened to you. You should have asked Mom directly, Steve." Silence. Then, "You're right. When I told you something was wrong, you told me to leave her alone. You didn't ask one question. You just believed Diane because her version was easier." He didn't argue. He said he was sorry again and asked if he could visit Ruth sometime. I told him that was Mom's decision, not mine. He came the following Sunday with a box of chocolates. Mom accepted the chocolates. She didn't say much. Grandma Evelyn never called. She was 87 and she processed things her own way. But in late March, a plain white envelope arrived in my mailbox. No return address. Inside was a photograph. Old, slightly bent at the corner. Diane and me, maybe 6 and 11, standing in Grandma's backyard. We were laughing. Diane's arm was around my shoulder. On the back, in Grandma's careful cursive, both my granddaughters. I looked at it for a long time. The two girls in the photo had no idea what was coming. I put it in a drawer. I didn't throw it away. By April, Mom had gained 8 pounds. Her color was better. She was sleeping through the night, eating 3 meals a day, and doing her physical therapy exercises with Karen without complaint, which, if you knew my mother, was its own kind of miracle. Ruth Mercer did not enjoy being told to stretch. She went back to Grace Baptist on a Sunday in mid-April. Betty Dawson saved her a seat in the third pew, same as always. Betty held Mom's hand during the opening hymn, and when Pastor Williams welcomed Ruth back from the pulpit, Mom lifted her chin and nodded once, the way she used to when she was letting you know she'd heard you and you could move on now. I hired a part-time aide to stay with Mom during my shifts at the hospital. Her name was Linda, and she was 63, calm, and had a laugh that filled the apartment. Mom liked her. That mattered more than any credential. Mom started calling people again. Betty first, then her friend Darlene from Bridge Club, then a woman named Joan who she'd known since high school. The calls were short, 10, 15 minutes, but I could hear Mom's voice through the wall, and it sounded like a voice I remembered from years ago. Before the locks, before the silence. One afternoon in early May, I came home from work and found Mom sitting on the balcony in a lawn chair, a seed catalog open on her lap. "I want to plant tomatoes this spring," she said, "like I used to." I bought soil, pots, and seedlings that weekend. We planted them together on the balcony, 4 cherry tomato plants in terracotta pots lined up along the railing. Mom patted the soil down with her bare hands and said, "Your father would be proud of you." "He'd be proud of both of us, Mom." She smiled. First real one in a long time. I've thought a lot about the word loyalty since all of this happened. People kept telling me to keep the peace. That's the phrase everyone reaches for when they want you to stop making noise. Keep the peace. She's your sister. Don't make this public. Think about Mom. But I was thinking about Mom. That was the whole point. Every phone call I made, every letter I sent, every time I stood on that lawn and shouted her name, I was thinking about my mother. The woman who raised me, who made oatmeal every morning until I was 13, who drove 40 minutes each way to watch me play junior varsity volleyball and never missed a game. I was thinking about her sitting alone in a dark living room while her eldest daughter emptied her bank account from the kitchen table. Keeping the peace would have cost my mother everything she had left. I used to think setting boundaries meant pushing people away, that it made you cold or bitter or difficult. I don't believe that anymore. Boundaries are what you build around the people you love to keep them safe. Sometimes that means standing alone for a while. Sometimes that means the people you thought would stand with you are the ones you have to stand against. My sister will always be my sister. That fact doesn't change, but she will never again have access to my mother's bank account. She will never hold my mother's phone. She will never answer my mother's door and tell me I'm not welcome. If someone in your family is using the word loyalty to keep you quiet about something that doesn't feel right, that's not loyalty, that's leverage, and you don't owe silence to anyone who uses love as a lock. I'm not telling you to go to war with your family. I'm telling you, if something feels wrong, trust that feeling. It's there for a reason. After the dust settled, if dust ever really settles, I sat down with Margaret and set up a structure. Real boundaries. Documented ones. The kind that don't depend on trust alone. Mom's finances are now managed through a joint arrangement. I handle the day-to-day, bills, groceries, medical expenses, and a financial advisor named Colleen Wright reviews everything quarterly. Full transparency. Every statement is available to any family member who asks. I told Aunt Patty and Uncle Steve, if you want to see the numbers, you can see the numbers. Anytime. No questions asked. Nobody's asked yet. But the offer stands. Visitation is open. Anyone in the family can come see Mom. Patty does, regularly. Steve comes once a month. Betty Dawson is over twice a week, sometimes with pie, sometimes just to sit. Diane's visits are different. Under the terms of the court order, she can request supervised contact. So far, she's made one request. Mom said no. Quietly, calmly, and without hesitation. Not this year, Mom said when I asked if she was sure. Maybe not next year either. I don't make that decision for her. I just make sure nobody takes it away from her again. I am Mom's healthcare proxy now. Every medical decision goes through me, with input from Dr. Nguyen and from Mom herself when she's able. I don't make choices alone. I don't sign forms without explaining them. I don't lock anyone out of the process. Uncle Steve asked once over coffee at Patty's house, "Can Diane still come to Christmas?" "That's not my decision," I said. "That's Mom's." He looked down at his mug. I think he understood. I didn't build walls around my mother. I built a door. A proper one. With a lock that only she holds the key to. Christmas Eve. 1 year later. My apartment is small. No cathedral ceilings, no bay windows, no remodeled kitchen. The tree is 4 feet tall and sits on an end table by the window because there's no room for it on the floor. I strung it with the same lights Mom used when I was a kid, the fat, colored bulbs that get warm to the touch. The table seats 6 if we squeeze. Tonight there are 5. Me, Mom, Aunt Patty, Betty Dawson, and Kaylee. Kaylee transferred to the community college in the fall. She drives over from her dorm once a week to see her grandmother. She never mentions Diane unless Mom brings her up first, which Mom rarely does. Kaylee sets the table without being asked and does the dishes after. She's quieter than she used to be. But she's here, and that counts. Betty brought her sweet potato casserole, the same one she's made for 30 years. Patty brought wine. Kaylee brought a candle that smells like cinnamon and probably cost $4. Mom is sitting at the head of the table. She's wearing a blue sweater I bought her, with my own money, from a shop downtown. She gained back most of the weight. Her cheeks aren't hollow anymore. Her hands still shake a little, but her grip is strong. She says grace. She doesn't make it long. Thank you for this table. Thank you for the people around it. And thank you for my daughter who fought for me. I feel her hand find mine under the table. I hold it. Through the window, past the balcony where 4 tomato pots sit empty, waiting for spring, a thin layer of snow is falling over Millbrook. Last Christmas, my sister served wine in a house she paid for with my mother's money. This Christmas, my mother is sitting in my kitchen, holding my hand, eating pie I made from scratch. It's quieter now. But quiet, I've learned, is not the same as empty. If you're watching this, and you're in a situation like mine, maybe your sibling has power of attorney. Maybe you haven't talked to your parent in months, and you don't fully understand why. Maybe everyone in your family believes a story that isn't true, and you're standing there holding the truth like a stone nobody wants to look at. I want you to know, you're not crazy, you're not the problem, and you don't have to figure it out alone. There are elder law attorneys who will listen to you even when your family won't. There are private investigators who can trace what's happening to your parents' money. There are APS caseworkers who will come back a second time if you give them something real to work with. The system isn't perfect. I know that firsthand. It failed me the first time. But I went back. And eventually, the truth was too heavy to keep buried. My sister stole $200,000 from my mother. But what she really stole was time. 14 months of my mother sitting in a living room alone, wondering why her daughter never came. 14 months of phone calls that lasted less than 5 seconds. 14 months of letters returned unopened. I can't get that time back. Nobody can give it to me. But I can tell you that every month since then, every morning I